The Committee on Foreign Affairs will come to order. Purpose of this hearing is to assess the accountability mechanisms that ensure American taxpayer money is being spent as intended in Ukraine. I now recognize myself for an opening statement. It's been a year since Vladimir Putin launched his unprovoked war of aggression in Ukraine. And in response, Europe has provided significant aid, but must continue to do more to keep the government of Ukraine from defaulting and ensure it's able to prosecute the war. Additionally, Congress has also provided a significant amount of assistance to Ukraine to ensure Putin's aggression is stopped at Ukraine's border and that a NATO ally is not next. I've supported U.S. assistance because a victory by Putin in Ukraine would further embolden Americans' adversaries, from Chairman Xi in Beijing to the Ayatollah in Tehran to Kim Jong-un in North Korea. However, it's imperative that the American people know about the existing accountability mechanisms, including third-party monitors such as Deloitte and the robust oversight being conducted by Congress, and in particular this committee. When Republicans took the majority, we made it very clear that accountability will be paramount to continued assistance in Ukraine. This is just the first of many hearings and briefings I will hold to ensure the assistance we are providing is being used as intended. Of the $113 billion appropriated across 4 supplementals, approximately 60% is going to American troops, American workers, and to modernizing American stockpiles. In fact, only 20% of the funding is going directly to the Ukrainian government in the form of direct budgetary assistance. As required by law, these funds are only dispersed to Ukraine following verification that the money is spent on approved items and activities. All funds are also subjected to external third-party monitoring by Deloitte. They are conducting randomized spot checks to verify the use of this assistance. Additionally, they are working with Ukraine's Ministry of Finance to review its monitoring, transparency, verification, and reporting systems and procedures. Today, we have the opportunity to question the independent inspectors generals from the Department of State, USAID, and the Department of Defense. This is the first time all 3 of you have appeared together before any committee to discuss your oversight role in the 64 planned and ongoing audits and reviews of U.S. assistance to Ukraine. Your work is a critical component to ensure that Congress is being good stewards of the taxpayers' money. And it's necessary to prevent waste, fraud, or abuse, and if need be, investigate and resolve any incidents. Congress has also been exercising oversight. Through the passage of several bills, we have ensured that there have been 39 accountability provisions passed into law. And since day one as chairman of this committee, I've been actively exercising my constitutionally guaranteed responsibility to pursue stringent oversight as well. My first committee meeting was a classified briefing on the U.S. response to Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. And last month, I led a congressional delegation to Ukraine and Poland to conduct in-person oversight of U.S. aid to Ukraine. I saw firsthand the process is working and delivered a clear message not only to our embassy team, but also to President Zelensky about the importance of U.S. aid to be spent appropriately to guarantee continued support. In short, every dollar counts. The Biden administration should expect this committee to continue to be vigilant in demanding transparency and accountability for U.S. assistance to Ukraine. To be clear, I do not conduct this oversight to undermine or question the importance of support for Ukraine, but rather, to the contrary, oversight should incentivize the administration in Ukraine to use funds from Congress with the highest degree of efficiency and effectiveness. And while there is strong bipartisan support on this committee and in Congress for the continued support of Ukraine, transparency and accountability are critical to ensure the aid we are providing is being used as intended and it advances U.S. national security interest. The American taxpayer wants and deserves accountability. They want to and deserve to know where their money is going. And in closing, I just want to say, as I met with all three of you, as the first supplemental was passed, I know speaking with the State Department, with Samantha Powers at USAID, with the Department of Defense, with our ambassador to Ukraine, I stressed to them the importance of putting mechanisms early in place from day one to ensure we had accountability in place. And I think we're going to hear from you that how that has been working. It's always better to be in right at the beginning rather than later on when something wrong has happened. So I really appreciate you being here today, and I look forward to your testimony. And with that, I recognize the ranking member.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our witnesses. As we all know, Russia's brutal war against Ukraine grinds into its second year, and Congress and the American people will continue to stand with the brave Ukrainians who are defending their rights and freedom. Ukrainians did not ask for this unjust war of aggression. They are only asking for our support as they defend their home and their sovereignty. And it is in our national interest to provide that support to Ukraine so it may win this war, which it will. Our effort isn't just about Ukraine and its citizens. This struggle is for democracies around the world and free people standing up to brutal autocrats like Putin to reinforce the notion that might does not make right. You know, when I was chairman and served this chair, I was proud to lead congressional delegations to Ukraine, Poland, Moldova, NATO headquarters, and other critical neighboring countries in a bipartisan fashion before and after the February 24th full-scale invasion. And we were together on many of those trips. And I believe bipartisan unity strengthens our coalition of allies and partners. And I want to thank the chairman who traveled with me to many of those places. And we worked very collectively in that regard, as we continue to do here. So on those visits and in the hearings and briefings that we've held over the years, we've had the opportunity to see firsthand the impact that American assistance to Ukraine has had on the trajectory of this war. And we've also had the opportunity to regularly engage with the administration on its diplomatic and military strategy, as well as the unprecedented oversight the administration and the officers of our witnesses here today are undertaking. Which is why, to be frank, you know, and it's not the chairman, and I disagree with the premise cited by some others on the other side of the aisle who are falsely claiming that support for Ukraine is, and I quote, a blank check. This is simply not based in fact, and either reveals a lack of understanding of the safeguards that are already in place on our assistance to Ukraine, or worse, an effort to mislead the public to undermine the assistance and Ukraine's defense against Russia's invasion. Embedded in our country's support for Ukraine are strict oversight mechanisms. Every dollar in shipment of U.S. security assistance provided is audaciously tracked by an integrated whole-of-government effort led by the Departments of State and Defense. These mechanisms aren't new. They span across agencies and coalesced in an interagency effort that has regularly been briefed to Congress, including the administration's interagency effort entitled The U.S. Plan to Counter Illicit Diversion of Certain Advanced Conventional Weapons in Eastern Europe. Members on this committee have received multiple briefings on this very effort and have available to them scores of documents detailing the exact types of assistance provided to Ukraine and the timing of that assistance. In addition to the administration's own efforts to ensure utmost monitoring and accountability of our assistance to Ukraine, 3 inspectors generals overseeing the State Department, Defense Department, and USAID developed an integrated response and accountability investigatory approach called the Joint Strategic Oversight Plan for Ukraine. In January of this year, our witnesses traveled together, and we thank you for that, to Ukraine, underscoring the seriousness with which the administration is taking your work as inspectors generals. Your trip is just one facet of a sustained oversight over the humanitarian, economic, and military aid to Ukraine and to neighboring countries affected by the war. But the U.S. does more than provide defense and humanitarian assistance. We are providing global leadership. When Putin gave the order to invade Ukraine, he did so under the false assumption that the West would be divided and that the United States and our partners and allies would not meet this historic moment. And I want to commend the Biden administration for leading global efforts to push back against Russian aggression and for cultivating unity against Russia's actions in Ukraine. Now the world is watching us. And unfortunately, some of my friends on the other side of the aisle who happen to be MAGA Republicans are putting Putin exactly what he wants and giving him exactly what he wants, even at times repeating Kremlin talking points. We cannot allow those efforts to compromise the U.S. leadership in places like the UN, where our diplomats sit across from their Russian counterparts on a regular basis to dispel Russian propaganda, and we need to work with our global allies and continue the isolation of war and criminal of the criminal war criminal, Mr. Putin. And so I want to thank our witnesses, and I want to thank our chairman for his stand-up and fighting to make sure that we continue to give the Ukrainian people what they need to make sure that they are able to win this war. He's been stand-up. We've been walking side by side in that, and I want to make sure that that's clear that I appreciate the actions and the movement of the chairman and we will continue to work together. And thank you for the work that you do to assure the American people that we know where every dime is. And with that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. I really appreciate your comments, sir, and I think this is a necessary step to build confidence with the Congress that the money is being accounted for. And so other members of the committee are reminded that opening statements may be submitted for the record. We're pleased to have a distinguished panel of witnesses before us today. Ms. Diane Shaw is Deputy Inspector General, who is currently performing duties of the Inspector General of the Department of State. Ms. Nicole Angarella is the Acting Deputy Inspector General, who is currently performing the duties of Inspector General at the U.S. Agency for International Development. And Mr. Robert Storch is the Inspector General at the Department of Defense. I want to thank all of you for being here today. Your full statements will be part of the record, and I ask that you each keep your spoken remarks to 5 minutes. I now recognize Ms. Shaw for her opening statement.
Good morning, Chairman McCall, Ranking Member Meeks, and distinguished members of the committee. Thank you so much for inviting me to discuss the Department of State Office of Inspector General's oversight of the U.S. government response to the war in Ukraine. I'm very pleased today to be joined by my counterparts from our primary oversight partners in this space, the U.S. Agency for International Development and Department of Defense OIGs. To date, Congress has appropriated more than $100 billion to fund a vast array of activities in support of the U.S. response to the war in Ukraine. And we in the oversight community recognize that it is vitally important to our stakeholders, including all of you and the American people, that those precious resources reach their intended beneficiaries and accomplish intended goals. Fraud, waste, and inefficiency cannot be allowed to taint that effort, which is why we take our oversight role incredibly seriously and have each made oversight of the U.S. response to the war in Ukraine our #1 priority. The state USAID and DoD OIGs are particularly well positioned to take on this critical interagency oversight work, given our long history of collaborating on overseas contingency operations. Leveraging that history and the deep relationships that we've forged with each other and others in the oversight community over many years, we established the Ukraine Oversight Interagency Working Group nearly a year ago, consisting of professionals from 20 U.S. government accountability organizations. The closely coordinated work of that group is resulting in agile, integrated, and comprehensive oversight of this sizable U.S. enterprise, as reflected in the Joint Strategic Oversight Plan for Ukraine that we published earlier this year. This plan, and a report issued this week expanding on the plan, present the full range of the working group's Ukraine-related work, amounting to nearly 90 completed, ongoing, and planned projects. The plan and recent report detail 3 strategic areas of oversight that cover the waterfront of the U.S.-Ukraine response effort: These are security assistance and coordination, non-security assistance and coordination, and management and operations. State OIG has carefully designed its work to contribute in important ways in each of these three areas. Our work, which is described in more detail in my written testimony and on the State OIG website, is expected to culminate in more than 24 products that explore a range of topics within each of these strategic areas, including end-use monitoring of U.S. origin defense articles and other equipment, how the department is deploying aid to address humanitarian needs, whether the department has developed a strategy for the billions of dollars of foreign assistance flowing to Ukraine, and Embassy Kyiv operations, from its shuttering in February of 2022 to its reopening in May to its current operating status. In addition to this important work, we also recognize the need to be proactive, especially as it relates to our anti-fraud and corruption efforts. On that front, we're working with our OIG counterparts to disseminate products that will increase fraud awareness and reporting. And we're also expanding our investigative data analytics capacity to help identify trends in the Ukraine-related fraud reporting, as well as common criminal schemes. I am confident that our completed, ongoing, and planned work, when taken together with that of our partners on the working group, will provide an end-to-end account of how the vast resources appropriated in this context are being utilized. We've made an excellent start, but I recognize that there's a potentially long road ahead, and to that end, we've been thinking strategically about how best to further this important work. This was at the forefront of our minds when we traveled together to Ukraine and the surrounding region earlier this year. There, my counterparts and I directly communicated to U.S. and Ukrainian officials the message that U.S. assistance must be transparently accounted for and that corruption affecting U.S. assistance will not be tolerated. That message was well received at the time, but we recognize that continuous in-person engagement and direct observation will be needed to ensure that the necessary controls are in place. Accordingly, we're working closely with the department to secure permanent positions at Embassy Kyiv, which we believe will help us better deliver the independent oversight on which our stakeholders rely. Thank you for your interest in our work and the opportunity to discuss our commitment to timely, objective, comprehensive U.S.-Ukraine response oversight. And I look forward to addressing the committee's questions.
Thank you, Ms. Shaw. I now recognize Ms. Anjarella for her opening statement.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Meeks, and distinguished members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to appear before you today to discuss the U.S. Agency for International Development Office of Inspector General's oversight of assistance to the government and people of Ukraine. I'm honored to be sitting here today with my close partners, IG Storch and Deputy IG Shaw. My testimony will describe USAID OIG's oversight response efforts, including a summary of our recent, planned, and ongoing work overseeing USAID's economic and humanitarian assistance to Ukraine. I want to clearly state that providing timely, independent, and objective oversight of USAID's Ukraine response is my office's top priority. I appreciate the support from members of this committee providing $13 million in supplemental funding to our office to conduct this important work. Since the start of Russia's invasion, USAID has been the primary agency providing non-security assistance to Ukraine. This includes $22.9 billion appropriated in direct budget support, more than $1.4 billion in humanitarian assistance, and more than $800 million in development assistance. This support requires proportionate levels of independent oversight. To provide this oversight, USAID OIG has more than 60 staff supporting its Ukraine portfolio. Over the last 9 months, we issued 8 products, including a joint strategic oversight plan with our IG partners. Our first advisory report drew from our previous work and experience providing oversight of USAID's programming in other complex environments. Each of these responses presented unique challenges for USAID, but they shared common risks that we highlighted for the agency as it initiated programming in Ukraine. Next, we issued a fraud alert, identifying common schemes likely to affect USAID programming. Following its issuance, a major USAID contractor in Ukraine reported to us an allegation of collusive bidding, which they identified prior to making a subaward. We immediately issued a second fraud alert, warning the aid sector working in Ukraine to look for and report similar schemes. In addition, our investigators have provided more than 20 fraud awareness briefings to nearly 1,000 individuals supporting USAID programs in Ukraine. We worked closely with our colleagues at State and DoD to issue joint hotline materials in both Ukrainian and English. Since broadcasting our joint message to report fraud to the IGs, my office has received 178 reports related to Ukraine. This is a 556% increase in reports from the previous 11-month period. To date, we have no serious criminal findings associated with USAID assistance to Ukraine. This increase in reporting, however, shows that our outreach is working and that individuals know how and who to report potential misuse of USAID funds to. We also issued 3 products related to USAID's direct budget support: an information brief that described the 3 different World Bank trust funds and their oversight mechanisms. We found the oversight mechanisms align with GAO's federal standards for internal controls. In a future report, we will assess the effectiveness of those established mechanisms. Our work is also enhanced by longstanding partnerships and MOUs with our oversight counterparts at UN agencies, the World Bank, and bilateral donor countries. With the current limitations on U.S. government personnel in Ukraine, these relationships offer a front row seat to what is happening on the ground. This collaboration also sends a powerful message that we are united and that we will use our collective resources to ensure donor assistance reaches its intended recipients. Looking forward, USAID OIG has 22 planned and ongoing oversight projects related to Ukraine. This work aligns with USAID's major programs, objectives, and funding in Ukraine. Internally, in furtherance of our oversight work, we are recruiting surge capacity staff, enhancing our data analytics program, working to add permanent IG positions in Kyiv, and we are continuing to develop products that will provide timely information to policymakers. As the head of USAID's Office of Inspector General, Congress and the American people have my commitment to independent, transparent, and timely oversight of USAID's Ukraine response. Further, I am committed to helping lead, with Diana and Rob, our interagency working group. Together, we will ensure a comprehensive, efficient, and whole-of-government approach to our work. Thank you for your support of USAID OIG. I look forward to your questions in the discussion today.
Oh, thank you for that testimony.